Alrighty. So, good morning, good afternoon, good day, everyone, depending on where you are connecting from. Thank you for joining Wellness Hour. For those of you that are new, Wellness Hour happens once a month, and there's a new guest each month to bring a different perspective to wellness and well-being. For each of us that are in the community association industry. So it's not limited just to managers, but it's for business partners, homeowner leaders, really anyone that gets to deal with the fun and excitement that we experience on a regular basis. To kick things off today, though, I do want to turn it over to Philip Dolan with Sync Systems. Wellness Hour is also brought to you by different sponsors throughout the year, and so that we're very grateful for them. And so this month, our platinum sponsor is Sync. Philip.
Thanks, Melissa. What a nice introduction. As Melissa said, I'm Philip Dolan. I lead marketing here at Sync Systems. I thought I'd just briefly introduce you to Sync if you're not familiar, and then also importantly to today's speaker. So for more than 20 years, Sync's been building technology that makes living and working in a professionally managed community a great experience. It's that simple. We serve more than 1,000 management companies, more than 55,000 community associations, and we also serve more than 6 million homes across the US. And our mission has always been really simple, which is less tedious and more meaningful work. That idea of more meaningful work is exactly what today's conversation is about. We all spend so much energy on the operational demands of this industry that we don't always make space for the kind of reflection that makes us better leaders. Our speaker today believes that's worth changing. I have the pleasure of introducing Brian Butler, who's president of First Service Residential, the largest professional community association management firm in both Illinois and North America. He oversees hundreds of high-rise and HOA communities across Chicagoland and currently serves on the Community Association Institute's National Board of Trustees. Brian holds the PCAM designation and is a licensed attorney in Illinois. That's a double threat, Brian.
Oof.
He's also one of the most thoughtful voices in our industry and what it means to lead with clarity and purpose. Today, Brian's going to walk us through what he calls the freedom to reflect, how self-awareness becomes a leadership strength, how to shed the burdens that quietly drain your energy, and how to reset with intention. So with that, Brian, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. You made me sound a lot more insightful than sometimes I feel. But I am looking forward to a good conversation today with a lot of friends that I see on this call. So thank you to the team from Illinois. I see you have joined out in force. Appreciate seeing you guys, as well as my friends and colleagues from around the country. This is going to be a good conversation. I'm excited to join you, Melissa.
Thank you. Always good to have you. And you are one of those calming people that if you have a chance to have conversations with Brian, he has a very calm demeanor and can bring you back to center very easily. And just a quick kudos to Brian, in case you've missed the news from 2 weeks ago. Brian is the next president-elect of CAI. So he will be president in 2028. So kudos to you, Brian, for that.
Looking forward to it. It's exciting.
So how being a lawyer, being on the community management side, juggling family, work. I know, was it 2, 3 years ago you were, in a promotion environment. How do you stay balanced and maintain that calm demeanor that you have when you have so many things going on around you?
Yeah, it's thank you, Melissa, for that. And I am so excited to share that I have all of the answers to the meaning of life, balance, these important questions. So you have joined the right conversation because I'll solve all of your challenges today. Um, I gotta tell you, I never feel balanced. And I think that's kind of what when you and I talked about having this conversation today, it's giving yourself freedom to recognize that. Because I think we're always kind of chasing this illusion that you can have it all the time, never make that mistake. And that's one of the things that, as I have settled into this career, because again, I don't think I'd be alone in saying many of us found ourselves here. This was not always the intention to be working in this space. But as I have settled into this career, I feel a lot more freedom today than when I started. And a lot of that has come from, I think, reframing what success looks like and also reframing what failure looks like. Um, I was a kid from the middle of Illinois. That's where I come from. Peoria is my hometown. Whoop, whoop. I know none of you, hopefully none of you have had to be there. So sorry if you did visit us there. Um, but it was not a big urban center. It was not a big um, center for community association management, even HOAs. It's not a big thing. And so I really had no real frame of reference for this business or even what it means to be a manager. But when I would ever visit Chicago, which is kind of the biggest town near us, walking up and down the streets, seeing these high-rise buildings, kind of these really glamorous places, it does spark a sense of wonder in me. And so that was kind of my first foray into managing or even understanding how a high-rise structure would work, or even what a community association was. But as I was growing up, achievement meant a lot to me because it helped little Brian kind of insulate himself from criticism, insulate himself from feeling vulnerable. You know, chasing achievement gives us all a sense of power. And for me, kind of growing up different, I grew up gay in Peoria, and that is not always a very welcoming place, at least for people who feel different or are different. And so to me, achievement was always the path towards feeling more confident in myself and feeling more a sense of power in a world when you often feel powerless. And so I say that because I know I'm not alone. I can see your faces on this screen. I know many of you have done similar things, which is create that sense of purpose and power to help protect yourselves maybe from some feeling too vulnerable in this world. It can be a really challenging place to operate, especially in community management. And so that was my pathway towards this. And Melissa, I think you and I have broken down, just so you know, Melissa and I have now been friends for probably 4 or 5 years. So whenever she asks me to do anything, I say yes to that. But even in some of our private conversations, which I'm happy to share some of that here, uh, understanding who you are at your core can help open up so many doors for you professionally because it can release a lot of the expectations that you put on your own shoulders. So for me, leading with authenticity, leading with exactly who I am, gives permission for those around me to do the same. And if you can do that, you're already operating with probably, you know, another 30 to 50% of capacity because you're not trying to be something that you're not. You're not trying to convey something that feels inauthentic. So for me, it was a lot about I had to know who I was first. I had to know why I was chasing those things, and then kind of redefine, are these important? Or is there a better and healthier way of approaching these things? So that was sort of an interesting preamble, but I kind of wanted you to know where I'm coming from for this conversation today, and a little bit about my own background there.
So as you learned, your authentic self,
Hmm.
um, what sparked you to go to law school and become a lawyer?
Well, I think it started in that same space of lawyers. I've always enjoyed. My parents will tell you that I've been negotiating since I was 4. I had no idea, but there was always a debate. There was always tell me why, help me understand. There's a curiosity with which I operate. And I enjoy, pushing a case. I enjoy making an argument. I enjoy that kind of breaking down a problem and helping solve that. My parents will tell you when I had a curfew in high school, they were both business people, and I learned a lot from them. But I also learned you try and communicate in the language of your audience. And when I wanted an extra hour on my curfew from 10 to 11, I wrote a memo to them, an inter-home memorandum, and wrote down all the reasons why my curfew should be extended for an hour. And I thought it was hysterical because that's how they spoke. And they clearly thought it was hysterical because they'll tell you that story till today. But it kind of just showed that that's just how my brain operated. And I'm like, if I want something, what's the best way to make the case for that? So law school felt like a natural extension of what was probably an inherent personality trait. But it was another way to kind of build a skill set that could give you some power in this world. At the time, lawyers, at least, even though there were plenty of lawyer jokes, lawyers tended to be respected. They tended to have their voices heard. They tended to be um, impactful in a business sense. And so, yeah, law school to me was an extension of who I was, but it was probably another way to chase achievement.
So the shift then to community management, what were you thinking?
I was thinking I needed a job.
Like so
Uh,
many of us who ended up in this industry.
yeah, yeah. I graduated law school straight into the Great Recession. And they, at least here in Chicago, they were firing thousands of attorneys that year. Every firm was closing its doors. So there was not an option to even do the thing that I thought I wanted to do. And so my first job in this business came by being a temp. I was working
Yeah.
for a temp agency, and they put me at a building on the north side of Chicago in the East Lakeview Buena Park neighborhood. And I was making $11 an hour in 2010, and my first day was cleaning out a supply closet as a licensed attorney. And I thought, where am I? What happened? This can't possibly be my life. And what's interesting is that Rachel Davenport, who's on this call right now, worked at that building and left it like minutes before I got there. And so every time I see Rachel, even to this day, I'm like, I sat in her office for years. I found memos she had written. Her name is on so many things. Um, and so finding community association management was truly, at the time, survival. It allowed me to stay in Chicago, the city that I loved. It allowed me to, try and pay some bills. It never covered everything at $11 an hour, but it was something that at least um, gave me a lifeline. And even now to this day, I don't feel that different than that guy sitting in a supply closet cleaning it out. Like you never forget feeling vulnerable. And I felt vulnerable at that time. But this business, for so many, and certainly for me, creates a different sense of purpose. You create a different path for yourself. Um, you build skill sets you wouldn't probably have ever done organically, but this job sort of thrusts upon you. And so that's how I found it by accident. And it's been the best accident in my life.
So for those of you that have joined in, which we have quite a few, Brian, so kudos to you for
Woo!
that. Um, but would if you'd like to drop in the chat, like what was your first role in community association industry, and just let Brian and I know kind of where you're coming from, because to Brian's point, I think we all fell into it in a different way, and there's some very interesting positions, I'm sure. And Brian, you can see if any of them really stand out to you.
I see Kelly Zeibel on here for sure.
Cool.
Administrative assistant. I wish I had such a glamorous title. I think I was like, oh, that guy. There wasn't even a business card.
It's right. Callie doesn't even know either.
Oh, I see a paralegal. I gotta tell you, paralegals they remind me of property managers in a lot of way where like they have a skill set in everything. They know how to solve every problem. They're usually smarter than the people that they're working for. So if you were ever a paralegal, kudos to you. I get to say that now. Just very, very straightforwardly.
We definitely have quite a mix.
Yeah, I think, Melissa, you and I have talked about that too. This is a business that uh, if you have a skill set, whether it's hospitality, working in retail, working on the vendor side, it's so transferable because you're a generalist, you're a mini CEO of your own communities that you're working. So regardless of your skill set, there's some value here. I've met everyone from hotel managers, restaurant managers, home inspectors, real estate brokers. I mean, how many of us know real estate brokers that are now managers? Like when that market cools, we see a lot of brokers that want to come on the management side. And I will say this too, managers are often wearing a ton of hats. There's a side hustle, there's something else. There are so many creatives that work in this space. And I remember after I sort of moved a couple of layers up within the building that I was working at, one of the next temps that we hired behind us was like a part-time actor. And so like he'd work 20 hours a week and then he'd go on auditions. And I'm like, just that performance component, that skill set, that allows you to pick up the phone and have a good conversation with the resident because you're used to thinking on your feet. You're used to being a good communicator. And then one day he comes back and he's like, I booked a Walmart commercial, and then he's nationwide, the next week in some commercial for Walmart. And I'm like, well, there's Max. There you go. And then you come back to Park Place Tower and take a few more phone calls. So you can do a number of things to be successful in this business.
So with your skill set, you shifted from thinking you were going to be the world's most amazing attorney into cleaning a storage room. Um, what motivated you? What kept you focused in becoming a leader and, always looking forward to what the next opportunity was?
Yeah. I think those first couple of years, it truly was working through the trauma of missed expectations. And I know trauma is a really like charged word and we all have it. Um, but that first job out of school, and it doesn't matter if you went to college or didn't, but that kind of like first real moment of responsibility, you're kind of re-scripting your life or even trying to plan one or two steps ahead. And those first couple of years were an exercise in my mind of survival, recalibration, and better understanding what I wanted from this world. So that kind of self-discovery was all happening personally, professionally. It was an important couple of years for me. But I think what never stopped was I wanted to be better. I wanted to be more. And this is a career where, you can manage a community for 20 years. If you're going to be at the same community for 20 years, you got to be constantly going, what does next year look like? How can I push the envelope? How can I do something different? And I certainly was doing that at my property. And I also, looking backwards, realized that so much about our own professional success is tied up into preparation. What are you doing to build the skill set for the next thing? And some of that is, hey, raise your hand anytime someone has an opportunity. My manager was working on the annual budget for the association. I never put a budget together. Can I sit in on your meetings? Can I see how that's done? Can I train on that? It wasn't part of my job, but it helped her and it helped me. And so, kind of constantly raising your hand when an opportunity is there, even if you don't know anything about what you're doing, so many people are willing to lend a hand and train you and share their knowledge. This is hard fought knowledge that we win in this business. There's not a college degree for many people to do this. You're learning these things trial and error, one thing at a time. And so I have found, especially being in this industry now for, gosh, almost 17 years, is that when you find someone that has earned that knowledge, more often than not, they are more than willing to share it. So if you see someone that's doing something that you think is really cool, take them out for a cup of coffee. It doesn't have to be your boss. It could be literally anyone else. But get on their calendar. Teams makes it so easy. Zoom makes it so easy. Set up 15 or 20 minutes and get on a video call. Just don't be shy. I think that's one thing I learned too, is that if you got to be prepared and you got to be willing to put yourself out there.
So I remember when you were going for the promotion to president in your market and the mind hurdles. I don't know if that's the right word that I would want to use, but it was
It
a it was
started with mind, but I think that one had an F in it too. Just if you,
I was keeping it clean.
yeah,
Um,
wellness.
but that was an emotional roller coaster period of time. So do you want to like just touch on how you maintained the composure externally, even though you had so much going on internally, as you, I would say, almost fought for that a little bit?
Yeah, it's and it doesn't have to be for the president of a market or a big company. It's something that you want. And if you say this is something that I want and I don't have it yet, you have to be vulnerable to the potential that you don't get it. And so for me, it was about one, understanding that it was going to take a toll on me regardless. And just being aware of that however long that's going to take you. And for me, it was like, I can do anything for 12 weeks. That's how I viewed this. I can do anything for 90 days. And sitting in ambiguity for 90 days, I can do that. And that was my hope, is that, this period would only be 90 days. It ended up being about that. But I sort of tried to set an expectation that felt achievable for me to stay in that place of vulnerability. If I was like, I have to feel vulnerable forever, that's exhausting. But for me, I'm like, I can do anything for 90 days. And so that's how I reframed it, that it was in sort of bite-sized pieces. What's the task? What can I anticipate? How do I set that expectation for myself? If it lasted longer than 90 days, I would have probably re-upped at that point and still continued along in the process. But that's at least how I started it in my own mind. So that's step one. Reframe the goal into something that's achievable. And that can be time bound, maybe that's task based, whatever it is. But you got to have a plan on how you're going to tackle that, even if you're not clear on all of the steps yet. The second, I think, was really giving yourself grace that you're not going to get every one of these things right during that time. And that's where, just thinking back to how I approached the world growing up and even early on in this career, I read a book actually, and it was when I joined this company at First Service. It was part of the training process, but it was all about the growth mindset. And if you've not read a book on growth mindset or not reviewed what growth mindset is, I do encourage you to do it. I used to think as a baby lawyer who thought he knew it all, that I had all the answers. And that's the hubris of youth. That's the overconfidence of being in your 20s. You think you got it all figured out. Um, but when you think you have all the answers, it means every time that you fail, it can feel fatal. So every time I made a mistake, it felt so big. Like no one's going to want to hire me now, or I'm not going to be able to do this job, or, I didn't get to that resident in time and now they're mad, or I didn't have the answer when they wanted it. And, now the whole world is going to end. It felt very fatal anytime a stumble happened. Well, to stumble is human. It happens to all of us probably multiple times a day, or hour, depending on the day. And so for me, it was a lot about giving myself, after I read that book, recognizing that and they framed it through really successful people. So like professional athletes, the Michael Jordans of the world, big time business folks, right? Is that you don't just come out of the womb being the best basketball player in history, right? You don't come out of the womb being an Olympic champion. Those people practice every day. They want to get better at their craft every day. They miss more shots than they take. And I was never really like the athlete. Like that wasn't kind of the way that I viewed the world. And yet, reading that book, I recognized that being prepared for failure, working through failure, allows you to grow and be better. And so I had to reframe what stumbling looked like and what it meant for me. And so now, going for a promotion, going for something bigger, you have to be okay with not getting it right, but recognizing that that is an opportunity not only for you to grow, but for you to show the other people around you how to grow as well. So, not having all the answers, that was important for me. And having a good support system. Uh, I've sort of joked on this call already that Melissa and I have been friends for many years, but I've known many of you for a lot longer than that. And so, being vulnerable with the people around you, being honest about what it is that you want, and trying to rely on not just yourself, but some of those key voices that can provide you feedback. I often, we all work with boards in some way, shape, or form, right? And boards are groups of volunteers. They all have their own perspectives. You might have your teachers on the boards, you might have your business people, the lawyers that think they know it all too, right? Like you have all of these different personality types that sit on your boards. And along the way, someone shared it with me and it's really stuck with me, is that you are also someone that should have a board of directors as an individual. Who do you go to pressure test an idea? Who do you go to ask for that advice? When you're making decisions in a vacuum, it's easy to miss the forest for the trees. And so have your own board of directors. Who's that small group of people that you rely on to really, vet these possibilities in your own life? And what I have found in this business, especially, is that no one does this alone, right? We cannot manage these communities alone. We cannot support these boards alone. And so you have to have whether it's a spouse, whether it's a sibling, whether it's a group of friends, whatever it is, professional contacts, you got to have people that you can be honest with, that you trust in terms of their own experiences, uh, and not be shy about using them because those are some of the most impactful relationships that you're going to have in this world. No one's going to know what it feels like to manage your community. You guys have the best stories in the world. We all could write a book. For me, it's like a true crime miniseries, but I'll leave that alone. But we could all share these stories. So you're never boring at a cocktail party. But how are you sharing those stories? How are they learning experiences for you? How are you um, helping someone understand what a day looks like for you as a manager? Um, and really getting something back from them if you have ideas, thoughts, or goals. So, personal board of directors, you should all have one.
Love that.
My election's every year, so applications are due soon for the upcoming term.
1 year term.
1 year terms.
Okay. So then what did it look like for you, when you got the promotion and that 90-day period had come to a close? Like, was there like a moment of just utter relief, or were you like, okay, cool, now on to the next challenge?
I think the first was oh shit. Can I say that at Wellness Hour? Can I say
Totally.
that? Um, there is a moment of sure excitement that this thing that I wanted, this goal that I had, and I felt this way many times in my career, it's not just this last time, where yeah, there's a yes, we did it. This is great. It's happened. And then it's almost immediately followed by now what? Like, what do I do with that now? Um, and so I think how I lessened that fear on the front end was you're sort of doing a lot of the next job already, even if you don't have the title. Like if you've been doing this for a while, you're building a skill set to do that job even before it formally comes your way. And that's growth, right? So I think how I lessened the fear was I just again reframed it. What's really new? What's different than what you've been doing before? Maybe it's a bigger team, maybe it's a wider reach, maybe it's a different building, but what's really different from what comes before? And so really understanding that the change can really be 20% of your day instead of 100% of your day. So that stretch, that kind of reaching beyond what you're doing, um, making that, reframing that into an achievable bit versus feeling like everything was changing, was kind of how I got through that. And I've been so excited to see what this team has achieved here in Illinois. And we have been a team that's been through a lot of change in the last 5 or 6 years. And I know that we're not the only ones in the business that have had companies change and combine and either been acquired or moved. It's just industry consolidation feels like what we see a lot from managers. But what was key to me was always trying to be very open and honest with the people around me about what are our goals, where are we going, what does success look like, and just try and be present as best I can for this team.
So with that being said, as a leader of a team, you talked about the grace when there's the mistakes. So from your journey, from your experiences, what is your best piece of advice for your team members or anyone that you encounter or anyone in this industry, on giving themselves grace and
Yeah.
how to stay focused?
Um, I really think honesty is that's where like my brain goes. How do you handle that is being very honest. And that starts with yourself, right? What's my part in this? What would I do differently knowing how this has happened? So be honest about um, how you could have shown up differently if you're facing a challenge. Um, I think this is a business where not everyone is honest. And I don't mean on the manager side, I can mean on the client side, right? They don't tell you what they want. Or they have their own agendas. They're trying to get, the pet rules changed or something else in their community. They have their reason they ran for the board. And they don't always put in their candidate statement, here's everything I think and feel. And if you just hit these things, we're all going to be happy. Like they're not that transparent about it. Um, So it's hard, right? Especially in an early stage of your career to really understand, is what I'm being told the truth? How many residents are lying that they didn't, they didn't submit the application on time? Maybe their ARC mod was wrong. They're not always honest. They're just trying to get through their day too. And so that honesty component has always been, at least for me, helpful in managing some of that disappointment. So being honest with yourself, but also being honest with others. If you make a mistake, it says more about your character when you, first off, you identify it and then you disclose it and you work through it. People don't expect perfection. My boss right now, who's new to me in the last couple of years, has a saying, and again, pick up your nuggets, by the way, from the people around you. It doesn't always have to be your boss. But like any of these conversations you're on, take away something from it. But his phrase is that the cost of perfection is bankruptcy. And I love a good quip. I love a good like short takeaway. And yet that sticks like in the base of my brain. So like you aren't going to be perfect. The world isn't going to expect you to be perfect. But if you make a mistake and you're honest about it and you work to fix it, your stock price actually goes up in the people around you because you're showing the integrity, you're showing who you are. People trust you more when you're honest about your own failures or where something slipped and this is what you're doing to fix it. You can't constantly be slipping, but when you do, raise your hand and say it, and the people around you actually think more highly of you. So for baby Brian, that's counterintuitive. Every mistake was fatal. As an adult, as a leader, as someone who now sees, a wider version of the world than what I initially thought, those failures are actually character defining moments. And when I see you work through it and have the bravery to be honest, gosh, I think so much more highly of you. And I know that that's what people think of me too when those things happen.
So, I know maybe half the people on this call, and I think you might know the other half.
Mhm.
So just out of curiosity for everyone that is on, if you want to drop in the chat on a scale of 1 to 5, but your bubble that you are in, so the people that you are dealing with, the clients, the communities, the boards, depending on your role, on a scale of 1 to 5, do you consider them honest? One being, nope, they're horrible people right now, and 5, like, absolutely, the trust is fully there.
This is our gut check on our cynicism as
Right.
professionals. Is that where we're
Exactly.
at? Okay. We'll make sure I got it. I'm seeing some optimism in this chat.
I was gonna say these are a lot higher than I was honestly thinking like 2s and 3s, but
Depends on the day, I guess. What I'm seeing here, at least from a worldview perspective, and I probably am not alone on this, despite how crazy the world can feel right now, and how civility, regardless, seems to have flown out the window, I still hold on to this idea that people are fundamentally good, that people are fundamentally honest, even if they view the world differently. Um, I don't know that I always feel that way on every day in every situation, but I think for the most part, I try and operate with that expectation and assumption. And I'm seeing a lot of you guys in the chat probably feeling the same way.
so at this point in your career and all the things that you have learned along the way, what is something that you still consider to be a weakness for you personally?
Mm. Um, I think I think weakness. It,
Or opportunity to improve?
yeah, well, I mean, we could call it whatever, right? It's something I haven't mastered yet. Um, and I have to kind of give a kudos to you too, Melissa. There are a lot of ways to handle stress. And I love the people who are like, I'm stressed. I'm going for a run. And I'm like, what? No, not. How is that your go-to? Like, I'm so impressed by those folks. And then they're like, and I'm stressed tomorrow. You know what I'm going to do again? I'm going to go for another run. What? Like, it's just not. Um, it's not. It's not how I think. There have been periods in my life, don't get me wrong, where I'm like, I am focused. I am in the gym every day. I'm gonna like nail this workout. Like, but it comes and goes. But for those people that do it year after year, day in and day out, I'm like, good for you. That's fantastic. For me, because I wasn't like, I don't think I came from a space where like sports were a thing. I was much more arts and school and all of the like, that stuff. I was an indoor kid. Do we still use that phrase? Indoor kids? I feel like they're all indoor kids now, so maybe I'm maybe my people are finally coming up behind me. Um, but that's an area where, especially now that my husband and I have a daughter, longevity matters. And once you start looking at like, what's my legacy? How am I going to be here for as long as possible? For yes, this team, yes, for my spouse, but also for this little girl that I want to dance at her wedding. I don't want to be in a wheelchair. I don't want to have like my knees replaced at 50 and then be hobbling around for the rest of my life. Like I want to be healthier. So when you asked me on Wellness Hour, I was kind of smiling in my head because I'm like, that's a constant journey, right? Um, I don't think it helps either that in Chicago we have winter for approximately 11 and a half months out of 12. But when the weather's good, like getting out, going for a walk, seeing the sun, like that's always feels like an important goal. So when I achieve it, I'm like, oh, this is why people are happy. Now I see why they go for runs. It was good. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think and for those of you who've joined us, part of why I think Brian and I get along so well is that yin and the yang. Because I'm like, let's go for a run. And he's like, why don't we just talk about this for a
We could
minute?
talk about running. Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
that sounds better.
yeah, and I loved your reference to having a board of directors, having that group of people to recenter. And I know for me, you have been part of that board of directors in order to keep me from not running too much and going a little cray cray. Because I mean, what you bring to wellness is just such that level of calm. And it's for those of you that, get the opportunity to work with Brian and see him in action, like his wit and delivery of things is just phenomenal. And you can instantly go to a place of, oh, this isn't so bad. I got this. So I don't know if you're okay with it, Brian, but does anyone that's on the call that works with Brian want to comment on that? Like, do you see the same thing in him that we
And
do at the CAI level?
I told you honesty matters. So if it's not, say that. We're going to work on it together in this hour.
So Lynn put in the chat that Brian is so inspiring and supportive. And feel free to come off mute too if you'd like. You can come off mute and say yay or nay or anything.
I'm looking at their faces and I'm thinking of like the first time we had a fun conversation or a tough conversation. And with almost everyone I know on this call, there have been both of those things. So I I appreciate you asking the question, Melissa. And more importantly, I just hope you know um, these are not just like fleeting interactions that I have with you. I do tend to take a lot of things away from those interactions. The first time I met Mike Johnson, who's on this call here, uh, I know my little pocket of the world. And so anytime I get to sort of work with a broader group that's around the country, um, you see that we're all kind of doing similar things, but they're all with a slightly different flavor. But Mike has an energy about him that I was like, when does he sleep? Like he's running around, he's talking to everybody, he's got a smile on his face all the time. You can't see him right now because he's like chest up. But he's got a shoe collection that would make anybody, male or female, like just drool. And they're fun. He's running around these like massive convention centers in like the most fluorescent shoes I've ever seen in my life. And yet they're a conversation starter. And so, that's the other thing that I see from people is that being approachable, being open to those conversations and those learning experiences. I know that for some people that may come naturally. For others, you might have to dig deep and find that part of you. But that's truly where the benefit in our business comes from is relationship building. And there were a lot of times in my life in which I was like, I don't want to be seen. I want to be invisible. Growing up different, I keep saying about Peoria, but like growing up different, like don't look at me. I don't want to be vulnerable to that. And so finding a skill set where like you are open, you can build those relationships, you can be funny and charming and whatever those, things that may become more naturally to you, uh, work at it. I know there are days where Mike's like, he's probably digging deep to, to find it inside him to do it. Um, but I learned something from everybody, and I try to go, well, if that works for them, how can I take just a little bit of that magic and bring it to what I do?
So thinking 10, 15, 20 years future
Mhm.
forward, um, if Sophia d wants to get into this industry, what would you tell her? Like, what would be your hope, for her in this space?
Um, I know I'm not the only parent on this call, and I've met some of your kids too. And I also know this tends to be a family business. Whether you own your own company or not, I see a lot of multi-generational people that work in this space. Like once you find it, people see why it can be really lucrative. And I'm also thinking back to me when I wanted to be a lawyer and how many, like every lawyer I talked to was like, don't do it. Don't go to law school. Like they never say to someone else, be a lawyer. Like it's always this like, don't do it. And I know there's a part of our business that's really hard. And, maybe we feel that some days where we're like, why would you ever want to do what we do? Um, but I think just now as a parent too, if you want to do something, if there's something that's exciting to you, I don't want to, what's the phrase? Yuck your yum. Like, I don't want to be the one that like craps all over your view of that. So I think my response is more, how can I help you get there? What do you need from me to help you achieve that goal? Um, and my hope is too that by the time she's old enough, and if we're talking 15 years into the future, that this period that we're at right now that feels really challenging at times or negative or toxic, just our civil discourse, that we will have worked through some of that fever, and it'll be a different type of world. So that's kind of my hope that we're a little better next year than we were the year before. So 15 years from now,
So 15 years from now, we will all love where we live and love where we work.
yes, that's exactly right. And I think there are things that are going to make this a better profession than what we have now. And we're starting to see it. I know, you kind of had your sponsor at the top of this episode talking about technology, and we've all kind of seen this continue to evolve. I remember 15 years ago when someone was asking me about my day, I'm like, I touch more paper than I ever thought I would. This is a building where every work order was in paper and every schedule was in paper and every invoice was in paper. And I just thought, oh my God, this feels like I remember I was scanning invoices and that felt like I had moved this building 20 years into the future. And that was like the smallest thing I could do. Like, we don't know what technology is going to be around 15 years from now, but I do think there are two things that are true. One, this is fundamentally a people business, and the relationships are the value here, right? Who you
100%.
are, what you're bringing to that. Like these relationships are what matter. Like technology can't replace that. It might replace, some of the email drafting and um, you know, some of the tasks, right, that take a lot of our time. But I fundamentally don't think it's the value in what we do. I think we are the value in what we do. So those two things are true. I think there's going to be technology that makes our days a little bit more tolerable and easier to manage. Um, but I also think there's some stability because we're a human business fundamentally.
Absolutely. So now that you have 6 months to prepare for president-elect responsibilities and then, a year to get ready to be president, what is kind of your thinking, at least right now, on how you want to shape CAI and the industry during your year as president?
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about my preparation first, because there's another lesson that someone taught me is really resonating with me right now. Um, I'm going to phrase it in two different ways. When you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. Every time you go to another board meeting, every time you come in on the weekend, every time you answer one of those emergency questions or, emergency call, I should say, like that takes you away from something else, right? So finding that balance, like always going, is saying yes to this worth saying no to something else? And that no can be family. That no can be getting to the gym that day. The no can be something else, like figuring out every time that you're saying yes to something, the cost of that, truly. And that no is a complete sentence. I think we often say yes far too much, even to our own clients, even to the circumstance, even when it's not required, because we're problem solvers, we're people pleasers, that's a lot of what we do professionally. And so I think we build this muscle to say yes by default when the right answer is probably no. And not just for us as individuals, but as the company, as agents, whatever it might be, no should probably be the answer. Um, but when it comes to protecting yourself, when it comes to kind of reclaiming your time, I love that phrase too. The legislators that do it, whenever they're in a hearing, I'm reclaiming my time. Um, Saying no is important. There's an art to it. Uh, but get comfortable protecting your time. I can't be the kind of leader I want to be if I'm saying yes to every single thing in front of me. I can't be the kind of leader I want to be even for this Illinois team if I say yes and don't also begin to trim some of the other expectations and the other things that I'm doing. So it's a balance, right? You're finding what's the most impactful thing for me. What am I willing to compromise on, and what am I not willing to compromise on? Um, I think for the industry, I know, Melissa, you've done a great job of kind of highlighting the importance of wellness, highlighting the importance of, physical health, mental health, all of that. And those are conversations that are long overdue in our space. So I'm happy to see that that's what you focused on. And to me, I think there's a component of that matters, and that's really being an authentic leader. Like it's okay to be exactly who you are. It's okay to bring your whole self to work because if we're going to spend this much time doing this, why put on a mask while you do it? So I think there's a few themes that I'm still working on right now, but if I had to think of the things that have been most impactful to me, one is sort of protecting your peace in that way. What are you saying yes to? But also not compromising on who you are in the workplace.
Absolutely. Would I'm gonna put two people on the spot just since they know Brian and know that piece of the industry. So, Kelly, are you still on, or Michael?
Yes, I'm here.
Would you like to ask Brian anything about his future plans or his leadership and how he has survived it all?
Um, I mean, I think laughter for sure. Brian always makes us laugh, which is super helpful. But Brian, I'd like to know from you. I think you talked about kind of your story as a leader, but how did you get involved in like CAI leadership? And if you have someone that you're speaking to now, what would you recommend to them in preparing for that journey? Like if they want to join Managers Council or Business Partners Council, and
Yeah.
what would you recommend to them?
Uh, there's a couple. Thank you, Kelly, for that. And if you don't know Kelly Zeibel, you're going to see her a lot more next year because she's the next president of CAI International. Um, I think for me, and maybe you guys kind of feel the same, in a business that's constantly on like the annual cycle, like, oh, there's another annual meeting. Oh, there's another audit to do. Oh, there's another, like, you just sort of get into this Groundhog Day feel, where every year kind of can feel the same. And so for me, after a couple of cycles of that, I'm like, I want to do more. I want to do something different. And I thought of lawyers. Lawyers have bar associations. They get together and they drink all the time. But all I did was kind of go to work and come home, and I didn't know other people outside of my own kind of team or company within this business. And so I wanted to do more. And for us, at least here in Illinois, at the time, manager licensing was just starting. This was 2012. And so to be a licensee to do this, you had to have certain experience, or you had to get your CMCA through CAI. So my first experience with CAI came at a good time. I had to. If I wanted to keep doing this in Illinois, I had to have my CMCA. But the second thing was I was getting itchy to do more. And CAI has so many opportunities to get involved and volunteer and try new things and meet people across a profession instead of just across a company. And that those first few years, I think, helped me understand truly that this is a profession and not just a job, and that there's a lot of experience out there beyond just my own little four walls. And so I got to learn a lot about people's stories. So that's how I first got involved in CAI. Was licensing here in Illinois, but also wanting to help contribute to this as a profession. And there's so many ways to do this that, you could, if your local chapter is running an event, you could just volunteer for an event. Most of them have committees. Most of them have things that they're doing all year round. So like figure out what resonates most with you. I see a lot of times for folks, it's the education component. Like every time we do a survey, it's the education that feels like that's CAI's, primary driver for a lot of, at least on the manager side. But education committees, attending events, seeing these stories in person, there's a great way to just get involved right there. And so the chapter was my first real uh, understanding of the true work that CAI does. Um, and in our chapter, we had Jessica Tolles, who worked here in Illinois and ended up being CAI president as well. And so that was the only reason I even knew there was a national CAI organization. I thought everything was Illinois. Oh no, we're doing this all around the world. And so that was kind of how I understood that for the first time. So I met Kelly and I met Melissa by running for what's called the Managers Council. And the Managers Council is a national group of community managers that is elected by the CAI membership. They meet and they talk about policy and ideas and trends, and they make recommendations to the National Board of Trustees for issues that affect not just the managers, but really, I think, the profession as a whole. And so that was my first way to get involved at that level. So whether it's your chapter, it's just an event, or you've decided, hey, I want to continue to try and impact the profession more broadly, there are plenty of ways to raise your hand and get involved. Go to your conferences, go to your local conferences, go to national if you feel like it. I've loved being there the last few years, especially, and getting to see all of the cool things that are trending, not just in my own little corner of the world, but across the profession as a whole. Um, but it also helps reset you. And I don't know if maybe that's just for me, but when you're in that groundhog cycle, when you're doing that same thing day in and day out, even just taking an hour or two for you to do something that matters more to you than the job. And if it's CAI, great. Love that. Would love to see you at all of these events. But just getting out of the rut for a bit can help you kind of refine that purpose.
With a few minutes left, Michael, was there anything else that you would ask Brian?
I'm always like, I love Brian. Brian is, I always try to be the funniest guy in the room, and he's 10 times funnier than me. So I love that. And just someone who's so comfortable in his skin. And I know the life journey isn't always that, but your confidence, about yourself and your surroundings, I really enjoy. My question is, you know, how do you make the decision? I'm always interested as an owner operator. How does someone who's an executive like you make the decision to work for the mega mothership corporation versus a smaller operation and or no one from the Dallas office is listening, not go out and do it on your own? What are the drivers there to stay in a very large corporate environment in what we do?
Yeah. Um, I think there's layers to that question. For me, I didn't start in a large company, although at the time it felt large. I worked for a family-owned local company where the guy who owned it was name was on the door. And that was my whole world. And I know there are several of you on this call that worked there as well. And so my experience felt very intimate. And there were 200 people that worked for that company. That's not a small company, but it felt like whether it was the Christmas parties or the team meetings, I knew people. I may not see them every day, but I knew who they were. And I recognized that for me, that created an environment that felt safe. We're like, we're all in this together. If I know who you are, whether you're the accountant or the AP clerk, that intimacy helped me feel safer instead of feeling alone. Because as a manager, especially an on-site manager, I feel like I'm on an island a lot of the time. And so that to me made the difference, I think, between feeling safe, feeling like you could grow, feeling like you could take those chances, is really knowing the people that you work with. And so when I came to First Service, in Chicago at least, it was a very small company in comparison to these others. The next year, it ended up buying two of our largest competitors, one of which I had just worked at. So my whole family was together again pretty quickly. I didn't sort of leave for too long. But I never wanted to lose that feeling of intimacy. And so there are things that I do today that I think make a difference, or would have for me, which is trying to ensure that whether you're on site or you're frontline or you're in this corporate office, that you are seen for what you're contributing. Because so much of what you do is on your own, but making sure that you feel seen. So we have 500 associates here in Illinois, Mike, and I send a birthday card to every single one of them that I handwrite. And I send an anniversary card to every one of them that I handwrite. I send 1,000 cards a year here. And I did that because someone sent one to me once that had not just their signature, but an actual message that said, hey, thanks for what you're doing. Here's how you're impacting it. And when I send them, I mean it with every one of those cards. But it made a difference for me. And so can I be everywhere at once? No. I can't be at all the properties. I can't be in front of all the clients. I can't be there. But if I'm in a position where I know that intimacy helps people do their best, that's what I'm going to try and create, even if it is within a bigger environment.
That's amazing. Love that. I think now we all want to be on your team and get one of your birthday cards or anniversary
I'm going to
cards.
be arthritic before too long if we're doing all of them.
You got to work on that your longevity
That's exactly
comment.
right.
So, Michael's put in his birthday. He expects a card. So with that, we are almost at the top of the hour. And so I just want to thank you again, Brian, for being the guest this month and sharing your calm wisdom for what you have learned and how you bring wellness to your leadership approach. And thank you for everyone that joined us this month and all of the new people that joined. Hope to see you again on future wellness hours. Again, they are every month. Next month is Michael Mandillo will be joining and sharing his journey through some personal struggles. Later this year, I believe it's October, we have Michael Johnson, who will be joining as well. So feel free to look on the website and see who our upcoming guests are and take an hour, just 1 hour a month in order to join in. So that way you can continue to just get little tips and tricks along the way. But thank you all for being here, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate the opportunity. Bye, everybody.